Okay, so we need to start our third and final chapter within the circulatory system. This chapter is going to look at blood vessels and hemodynamics. So we're going to look at structure and function of blood vessels. We're going to compare the arterial side versus the venous side. We'll talk extensively about the capillaries and what happens there. We'll talk about hemodynamics. Hemodynamics are the forces that are involved in circulating blood. So there's a great vocab word for you. And then we'll talk about the major circulatory routes that excuse me, move blood throughout the body. So we've got some very basic components of the cardiovascular organ system. Remember that blood is in a closed system. So this vessel system is a closed system. Arteries are going to carry blood away from the heart. Arterioles are very small arteries that are going to flow into capillaries. So arteries are bigger, they're going to flow into arterioles, which are a smaller version, and from arterioles we're going to move into capillary, and that is all on the away side. We're moving blood away from the heart. Capillaries are going to be the site of substance exchange between blood and body tissues, whether that's nutrient rich, oxygen rich, or whether it's picking up of wastes and carbon dioxide. On the opposite side of the capillaries, we're going to move into the venous side. So we're going to start that return back towards the heart. The small vessels in the venous side are called venules. Venules are going to connect the capillaries to the veins. Veins are going to carry that blood back to the heart. And then there's also a term that I want you to make note of, and that's called vasovorum. I'm sorry, vasovasorum. VASO, new word, VASORUM, vasovasorum. Vasovasorum are small blood vessels that supply blood to the cells of the walls of the arteries and veins. Excuse me. So just like the coronary arteries and veins, the coronary vessels that we spoke about feeding the myocardium, we have the vasovasorum, which are very small vessels that are actually going to supply the cells that are the walls of the arteries and veins. Vessel structure. So histologically and anatomically, we divide blood vessels into three layers or tunics. A tunic is a layer. We have the tunica interna, or also called the intima. We have the tunica media, and we have the tunica externa. So tunica interna is going to be made up of an endothelium, the basement membrane, and then an inner elastic lamina. Next up, we'll have the tunica media, which is going to be composed of smooth muscle, and then there's another elastic lamina called the external elastic lamina, and then the outer layer is the tunica externa. Remember that an opening, remember from 201 in histology, that an opening is called a lumen. So this is the lumen of the artery. This is a lumen to a vein, and we'll talk about valves being present in veins. Arteries. So let's start on the arterial side. We can talk about arteries from their functional properties. So they have two functional properties. They have elasticity and they have contractility. Elasticity is what allows arteries to distend and recoil, to expand and contract. It's what allows them to handle the high blood pressure that they receive coming off of the ventricles. Contractility is what allows them to increase and decrease the lumen size. So it's actually changing the amount of space that the blood has to flow. Next up, we're going to talk about two different types of arteries. We're going to talk about elastic arteries and muscular arteries.